This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. I don't know about you, but where I am in Colchester, it's gray, it's chilly, and all I want to do, other than be here with you all, of course, is to get back to my couch and read a good book with my cat purring next to me. I mean, even if you're not a book nerd like me, you have got to admit that sounds pretty darn cozy. We're going to get you part way to that cozy scene with today's show. We have 3 book-focused conversations coming up, including a talk with an Addison County poet and a look at an upcoming book festival in Burlington. First, though, let's wade our way into a little bit of literary controversy, shall we? Last week was Banned Books Week, an annual national event organized by the American Library Association since the 1980s. Organizers shine a light on efforts to remove or restrict access to certain books and promote conversations about open access to information versus censorship. There were a number of local banned book events last week, all around Vermont. The Springfield Town Library, for example, shared a list of recommended books that are often the subject of censorship, like The Catcher in the Rye and To Kill a Mockingbird. And in a Facebook post, the librarians there wrote, "We're thankful for the freedom to read and for the crisp air, warm cider, and maple-sweetened stories that remind us why protecting books matters." Here to tell us more about Banned Books Week is Daisy Benson, the president of the Vermont Library Association and a library professor at the University of Vermont. Daisy, welcome.
Hi, Michaela. Thanks for having me on.
We're very glad to have you. Listeners, if you have questions about banned books or maybe a favorite book that you know has been the subject of censorship, send us an email about it to vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. You can also call in today at 800-639-6391. Daisy, right before this show started, we were talking through this list of the top 10 banned books of the past year.
Yep.
Who compiles this list exactly?
This list is pulled together by an organization called PEN America. They're part of the Freedom to Read Foundation, and they are the clearinghouse for collecting data on book challenges and book bans across the U.S. So they're able to parse out for you how many different books, how many books in this state, where are these bans and challenges coming from. So they provide lots of useful data, but they also highlight stories about the particular books and remind us of trends that we might see in the kinds of books that are being challenged in public and school libraries.
Now, before we talk through some of the names on this list, can you explain for us what the difference is between a book challenge and a book ban? Because both of those numbers can go into the creation of this.
So when a library has a collection and a person would like to have that book reconsidered for being in the collection, that is referred to as a challenge. And in Vermont, most libraries have collection development policies that describe what that process should look like. And so that is a challenge. And those need to be recorded as well, because in essence, it's a request to ban. A book is banned when a decision is made to remove a book from a library. And that can happen in a number of different ways, as we're seeing across the country. There can be a decision by a library to remove a book, and that usually is based on understanding the needs of the library and realizing that maybe it isn't appropriate for that particular circumstance. However, most book bans are coming down from pressure groups at this point who are putting a lot of pressures on schools and public libraries to remove books, which is often also leading to librarians losing their jobs if they are deciding that they do not want to do that particular work. And it's happening across the country. I'm pleased to be able to say that book challenges and book bans are not super common in the state of Vermont.
Are any books banned in Vermont right now? Do we know?
I don't have a list of ones that are, but are no comprehensive bans of books in the state.
Okay.
That is not an approach that is being taken here. We're not immune from it by any stretch, but I think we work really hard in this state. There are many different organizations that are working to make sure that access to reading material and the services provided by libraries are available. Those include the Vermont Library Association, the Vermont School Library Association, the ACLU. So there's a lot of people really who are on the ball and watching out for what's going on.
Yeah. In the announcement from PEN America about this list of the most banned books of 2024-2025 school year, it warned that the number of books being challenged or banned in public school districts all across the country has grown exponentially in the last 2 years. Why do you think that is?
I think it's part of the political polarization we're seeing. I think it's part of a national backlash in many ways to limit access to people who might otherwise not be visible in library materials. It's part of the DEI shutdown, basically. Many of the books that are being banned and challenged at the national level are either about members of the LGBT community or people of color, a really huge percentage of them, both books that are for children and books that are for adults.
Let's talk about this list here. What's at the very top?
So at the very top, we have a book that might be surprising, given what we've just been talking about, to see there. And that's a book called Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess, which has been around for a long time.
Yeah. That came out in the 60s?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact date, but yeah, it's been around for a long time.
And I feel like that one is always on banned book lists, like some of the ones we mentioned earlier, To Kill a Mockingbird, Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sort of classic ones that are always there.
Yeah.
That list often includes, for example, Huckleberry Finn as well. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of books that are sort of parts of different canons that are on banned book lists.
Yeah.
And continue to be taught in a large number of places or to be read by large numbers of people, but are still facing bans.
Okay. So there's a number of books on this list that are from many decades ago at this point, also some newer ones. Are there any newer books, Daisy, on this list that stand out to you that speak to some of the trends we've been talking about?
So number 4 on this list is a book called Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. It is about a young Asian American woman who is coming to recognize that she is a lesbian and about her coming out process. It's written for a adult to sort of upper young adult audience. And I think in some ways that mix of potential audience is something that people latch on to when they see things like that. Because books for young adults are often among the most challenged. Mm-hmm. Like huge numbers of young adult books are challenged.
Yeah. Are these conversations happening at the University of Vermont where you work? And we've been talking a lot about like middle and high school students, but is banning or censoring books in any way a topic of debate at the university level?
Yes, but in a whole different way.
Okay.
So we're not subject in particular to people coming in and saying, I believe this book needs to be removed. However, as an institute of higher education, we care very much about people's access to information and about issues related to providing a diverse array of materials. And so Banned Books Week is celebrated at the library, but also elsewhere on campus and celebrated year-round. Ideas about intellectual freedom and access. So, for example, there are numerous classes that either have units or lessons related to ideas about banned books or are really dedicated to the entire idea of banned books, and those are in a number of disciplines. Education, political science, English have all had courses that have had significant components about banned books. And those often work in connection with folks in the library to support some of the issues about, well, how does this really look like on the ground and what's that happening? I'll also note that our recently established School of World Languages and Cultures is going to be having an event in November, on November 13th, 4:30 to 5:30 at Memorial Lounge, where readers are going to come in and read excerpts from banned books from outside of the U.S. and in languages other than English. So we work year-round talking about issues related to banned books. Like Banned Books Week and the issues related to it is not just a 1 week a year thing for librarians. It is a constant issue that we are dealing with in terms of intellectual freedom and access.
Even in a place like Vermont, where there aren't a long list of book challenges or book bans.
Partly because you need to make sure that people are educated and understand the principles, right? People who understand why libraries make the decisions they do and why they collect the things they do and what processes they use when there are issues around those are better informed about and probably less likely to make large requests for huge numbers of books to be removed.
Let's take a call here. We have Jessamine calling from
Jessamine,
Randolph.
yes.
I know you're well known in the library community. Jessamine, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Hi, Daisy. Great to hear from you. I mostly just wanted to let people know about another resource because during Banned Books Week, one of the things we need to think about is books that may not be banned or restricted, but that may not even have gotten into the library in the first place. Vermont has a lot of very tiny public libraries, some medium-sized and some large, with small budgets. And there's a website called booksunbanned.com, which can point people, especially teenagers and younger people, towards library cards they can access online where they can read ebooks that may be banned or not available in their region. So that's Boston Public Library, Brooklyn Public Library, LA County, San Diego, Long Beach, and Seattle Public Library all have online cards available for teenagers and young people that can get them access to banned and challenged books and just a wider selection of stuff to read. Thank you.
Jessamine, thanks so much. That's Jessamine West, a librarian and technologist. Daisy, any other things to add there about those additional resources that Jessamine was talking about?
Additional resources or services that I would mention include something that both the Vermont Library Association and the Vermont School Library Association are participating in, which is a network of libraries in New England who are working together to provide a helpline for librarians when there is a challenge that comes into their library so that they can get immediate assistance in figuring out how to deal with that.
Daisy, on this note, Jessamine was talking about ways to access some of these books online that might be the subject of challenges or bans. And one question I wanted to ask you in our conversation today was about like the entire concept of a book ban feeling almost a bit outdated in this age of the internet where anyone can pretty much access anything they want at any time. And yet, I mean, these major organizations are really, waving a flag, ringing the bell, trying to make people very aware of the harm that book bans can cause. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Like, are book bans really as much of a threat as to freedom of speech and information as they used to be? If a high school student can go online and pretty easily access a PDF of any book they want.
So I think that's an excellent question. I think there's sort of two answers. The one is about sort of the direct access to the book, right? And as you mentioned, there are ways around getting access to a book, legal or otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm
not saying everyone should go and access it. Random PDF of all the books you want.
But we know those exist. But beyond that, there's also the issue of understanding and supporting a community and making students and young people feel like they're part of that community, right? And if your school library or your public library doesn't have books that represent you, you may not feel that you are welcome in that community. You don't see yourself reflected in the materials that are being accessed. It also makes it difficult for people to perhaps run into something they might not have thought about before, right? There are a wide number of students who might benefit from reading books that are on a banned list who might not be the students or the people who you think are the ones who are going to read it, right? And having them there makes them much more visible. And even for online books that libraries are providing through legal means, like many Vermonters may be getting books through the Overdrive/Libby system, right? It's harder to browse that system and just sort of bump into something than it is to even just look at the shelves in a library, right? So the ways in which we're encountering books is really changing in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Lastly, Daisy, but when we were chatting before today's show, we were talking a little bit about one book we both noticed on this list of the most frequently banned books. It was one I hadn't heard of before. It's called All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's a work about a transgender individual, and it's using the play on the blue that we make assumptions about what boys are, right? That they are into sports and that they conform to certain ideas about masculinity, and don't recognize that there is a wide array in which people who are born masculine might present, and that for some of those people that they may not identify as men. And that particular genre or audience of people and presentation of people is probably the most under attack right now in terms of book bans.
Well, we will link to this list of most banned books of the 2024-2025 school year that was compiled by PEN America. That'll be in the show notes for today's show and on vermontpublic.org if you'd like to learn a little bit more about these books. Daisy Benson is the president of the Vermont Library Association and a professor at the University of Vermont. Daisy, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
It was really fun. All right, we're going to keep this book chat going in just a minute. After a break, we'll be talking with two Green Mountain Book Festival organizers. The festival is bringing some very buzzy authors to Vermont this weekend, so stay tuned to learn more. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Vermont is a state filled with book lovers. I don't know if it's the libraries that anchor our small towns and villages, or the fact that we have many cold months to amuse ourselves indoors with literature, or something else entirely. But we are lucky here to have so many independent bookstores, libraries, and boosters of the written word. This weekend, for example, the Green Mountain Book Festival is returning to Burlington. Here to tell us more about the annual event is the board president of the festival, Barbara Shatera. Barbara, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We're very glad to have you. And joining us from Barrie is Andrew Liptak, who is a festival board member alongside Barbara. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Barbara, the festival is only one day this year. Why is that?
Well, as you can imagine, and certainly if you're in public media, you're aware of the cuts that have been affecting a number of arts organizations. Book festivals are certainly included in that. And we're an all-volunteer board. We're looking to maintain this series for the future, and we want to make sure that we can do it well. So we've scaled it down to one day. We have a big author that is sort of a household name, and then we have some local authors, some of whom are also household names, and we just felt that that was a much more sustainable model for us to make sure that literature and the love of books keeps going.
Yeah. And this year's festival is focused on speculative fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, I know that is a particular interest of yours, right?
Just a bit, yes. We were really excited to have John Scalzi be our headliner this year, and we have a rich number of Vermont science fiction writers as well.
Why the focus on science fiction? Why'd you land on that?
Part of this was just how we are organizing the festival into one-day events. What we're doing is we're basically looking to bring in, as Barbara said, a headliner. And this time around, for this fall, John Scalzi happened to be available. He's released 2 books this year, so he was on tour for his latest one, a little bit further out west, and his publisher decided to send him our way. And what we're hoping to do with this festival and then in the future is sort of, as we can get a headlining guest, bring in other authors sort of along the same genre lines as whoever we can get in. This lets us be really focused, and because John's really well known for science fiction, we decided let's put a spotlight on Vermont's science fiction writers, and we were able to invite a whole bunch, and we're excited to see what they have to talk about.
Barbara, can you tell us about some of the other authors who are going to be joining John Scalzi on the stage?
Well, on stage, it's Andrew Liptak who will be interviewing John Scalzi. So for that conversation, that's at 7:00 on Saturday. It'll just be the two of them, and then there's 2 panels that'll be held at Phoenix Books, one at 1:00 and one at 3:00. And we've got a number of really terrific authors: M.T. Anderson, Margot Harrison, and Andrew can certainly speak to the types of programming that they're going to be talking about, humor in science fiction, and how to world build. So it's really great for both readers to get a sense of how authors put together the stories that they tell, and also for writers to get some ideas about how they can craft their own work.
Yeah, humor in science fiction. That sounds like a really unique one. Andrew, who out there do you think is doing the best work in that area right now?
Well, Scalzi's one of them. His whole career, he's done a whole lot of fairly humorous and comedic science fiction novels. So one of his first ones, Agent to the Stars, is about a group of aliens who arrive on Earth, and they're hideous and people don't like to look at them. So their first inkling is, let's go to a Hollywood agent to see if we can brighten up our image. He's since gone on, and he's written back in 2022 a book called Kaiju Preservation Society, which was about a guy who is sort of recruited off the street to go to an alternate universe to study and preserve kaijus, big giant monsters. And his latest book, or his first book this year, is called When the Moon Hits Your Eye. And it's goes with a premise of what happens if the moon suddenly turns to cheese. And he spends the rest of the book, each chapter, sort of examining what the general worldwide view of that is. So he's in addition to some of his other sort of more serious, or like he's also writes military science fiction, but he's really made a name for himself as a sort of a comedic science fiction writer, and some of his books are really, really funny.
That's great. Well, we're talking right now about the upcoming Green Mountain Book Festival, which returns this Saturday to Burlington. But if there is a festival or other book event in your part of this region you'd like to let us know about, you can call in at 800-639-2211 or email Vermont Edition at vermontpublic.org. We have Stephanie calling in now from West Dover. Stephanie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm just here to alert people to the Brattleboro Literary Festival, which takes place Friday, October 17th through Sunday the 19th. We have some amazing authors coming, including Ocean Vuong, Adam Higginbotham, Allison Esbach, Taya Miles, Nell Irvin Painter, Martin Espada, Heather Clark, actually more than 40 award-winning and emerging writers, and it's all free and open to the public.
And some locals, too. I see Harry Bliss on the list there, a number of others.
Yes, and our own Tim Weed, who wrote the Afterlife Project. It's going to be really fun to hear everybody present. So come on down.
All right, that's the Brattleboro Literary Festival. Where is it being held, Stephanie? Are there a couple of locations?
There are locations all throughout town. The Stone Church, the Congregational Church, the Brooks Memorial Library, 118 Elliott Street. So people get to run around between events and, buy coffee and get some fresh air.
That's great. Stephanie, thank you so much for calling in and telling us about the Brattleboro Literary Festival, which is also coming up this weekend. It's a good time for book festivals in this cozy season. Barbara, I want to talk a little bit more about the decision to focus on science fiction or speculative fiction this year. Last year, the focus of the Green Mountain Book Festival was on romantasy. Is that right?
Not completely. We had a whole panel on romantasy, which was very popular. But we had a much more wide list of genres that we covered last year. We had many more authors, and the keynote was Ken Cadow, who wrote Gather. And this year, I mean, I love part of it was sort of serendipity in the sense that, John Scalzi was available. He had a couple new books out. He's a great author. And we have some great supporting programming that we can do around that. The speculative fiction, I kind of feel like is one of those things that it gives you an opportunity to imagine a future. And we're in, I feel like, a period of transition, and where a lot of us are sort of wondering about, what is the future going to be? And speculative fiction gives you the opportunity to kind of work through some ideas, and in a fun way. And also, I mean, a lot of Scalzi's work looks at aging and identity and in a lot of the things that, even in the very, present that we're contemplating. So, yeah, the best literature gives you an opportunity to see the world a little bit differently than you might have imagined, but also to see yourself in it.
Yeah. Andrew, we've been using science fiction and speculative fiction a little bit interchangeably in this conversation. Do you see them as the same thing?
Speculative fiction is sort of like the a much broader umbrella that covers that can cover science fiction, fantasy, horror, romantasy, all the little subgenres that sort of make it up. One of the it sort of serves our purposes here. I mean, we're mostly focusing on science fiction here because Scalzi is mostly known for science fiction, but we do have some fantasy authors and some other similar genres. Brian Staveley, who's actually down from the Brattleboro area, he's a fantasy author, and Margot Harrison writes sort of horror fantasy, amongst other things. But one of the things that I kind of want to point out is that it's really easy to pigeonhole people into genres, but a lot of I think that genres can be kind of an empty term because you can sort of enjoy what is in a genre based on what they're writing, and what types of themes they're using, what types of characters they're using, the writing styles. There's a lot that sort of crosses over from genre to genre. So I think that despite the fact that we're doing science fiction, it's not just appealing to just science fiction readers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Barbara?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Good storytelling is good storytelling.
Yep.
We humans are kind of hardwired for that, whether it be in the present day, in the past, or in the future.
Andrew, we talked a little bit earlier about some of the local authors who will be part of the festival this Saturday. Who are you most excited to hear from?
I'm excited to hear from all of them. I've met everybody over the years in various capacities. Let me list them off. We've got Craig Allenson, who's written a number of sort of self-published military science fiction thrillers, and he's got a really incredible fan base. William Alexander, he just wrote a book called Sunward. M.T. Anderson, Emily Hamilton, Margot Harrison, Mike Luoma, and Brian Staveley are other authors, and they've all written really interesting and eclectic stuff. And it's nice to have a wide range. It's not just like one type of science fiction story. They bring a lot to the table, and it'll be great to hear them all talk together about how to build worlds, and then how to make sure that those worlds are not horribly grim and depressing the whole time, that you can have some fun with it.
Yeah. We started this conversation by talking about how the structure of the Green Mountain Book Festival was changed a bit this year, constricted a little bit due to both constrictions and funding for the arts and just what it takes to put on a festival of this type. We've seen other changes and constrictions to arts and book festivals in this region over the last couple of years too. And I'd love to hear from both of you about what exactly it takes to put on a festival of this type and what kind of support Vermonters and people in our region need to show if they want events like this to keep going. Barbara, we'll start with you.
Well, funding definitely is a big consideration because we want to, when people come to the area, we want to be able to put them up. We want to, find accommodation for them. Some of them have, fees that they charge, and so the funding is sort of what makes it happen. So we know we have a certain amount to make it run. Then we've got to find the people, and that takes time. You want to do some research. You've got to build a contract and that sort of thing to bring the authors in, and then the logistics of pulling together panels. And so we would love to have more people on our board. It's a small board, but we are. It's amazing what you can put together with 5 or 6 people. So and a bit of a shoestring budget. So yeah, it's but it's a real love. It's just something that when you have an opportunity to work with authors that are so influential in your own life, it gives you a lot of great joy to have that sort of a little bit more of a fleshed out experience in reading.
And Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Barbara summed it up really nicely. It takes, there's some funding and resources that, every organization needs to, get something like this off the ground. But a lot of it comes down to passion. Everybody on our board is, are big readers. Every time we get together for a meeting, we're, usually asking, what books we've been reading lately or talk a little bit about them. And then it's just, putting together, a schedule, seeing who's available, knowing who to reach out to, and, just sort of, putting the call out to see like what types of things we want to talk about and focus on for future festivals. So we're focusing on science fiction this time because it's, that's what we happen to have, the authors lined up for that. We're always talking about like what else should we be doing next? What other genres do we want to focus on? We've talked a little bit about maybe doing something with climate fiction and environmental writing, poetry, history, regular fiction, romance, everything in between, and just trying to make sure that we're aware of what people are interested in. Reaching out to the public and just sort of seeing like what authors and people want to see, and hopefully if it doesn't happen to work out this time, maybe next time, and we're just really trying to work and build for the next couple, and we'll see where it goes.
Let's squeeze in one more caller here. Steve in South Burlington's calling in. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Follow up to the conversation about book bans. Mm-hmm. The Vermont International Film Festival, which starts, I believe, on Friday night, has a film. They're showing a film, and I think there's 2 showings of it called The Librarians. And you can go to the Vermont VTIF website and get the schedule for the film festival, which includes lots of other great films as well. But The Librarians is a documentary about the impact of book bans around the country and how librarians are being affected and how they're pushing back in some, hopefully, many cases.
Steve, thank you so much for highlighting that movie, The Librarian, showing at VTIF, which is coming up soon. Lots of love for librarians today. I'm loving it. All right, we do have to wrap up here, but let's give some thanks to our librarian, Barbara Shatera of the Fletcher Free Library in Burlington and the board president of the Green Mountain Book Festival. Barbara, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And Andrew Liptak is a board member of the book festival. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you.
One more email we just got from Siri in Bridport, a fellow book lover, emailed. She wants to give a shout out, they want to give a shout out to the Vermont Bookstore Tour. Siri writes, it's a wonderful, fun, free activity that happens throughout the year. You print a passport that you take to each independent bookstore included to get stamped. At the end, you get a free prize. It's a wonderful way to see different towns and regions and the truly amazing independent bookstores that we are lucky to have. All right, time for one more quick break. When we come back, we're going to ease into the rest of the day with a little poetry from an Addison County writer. That's coming up on Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. About a decade ago, Molly Johnson was in a terrible car accident with her cousin that left her with serious injuries. One way she processed the traumatic experience was through writing poetry. Her debut poetry collection from Green Writers Press is called Everything Alive, and it hits bookshelves today. Molly's also a middle school humanities teacher in Addison County. She lives in Middlebury. Molly Johnson, welcome to Vermont Edition, and congratulations.
Hi, Michaela. Thank you so much for having me and for the congrats.
I know this book has been many years in the making, and now it's real. It's sitting right in front of us on the table. How does it feel to have it in print?
I've been describing it as it feels like I've taken something out of my body and presented it to the world. It really feels like it came from inside me.
Is that scary?
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying in a way that I did not expect. Yeah. Yeah, it's vulnerable and it's sort of all there. So it feels like I can give this to someone and say, here I am, here it all is. And in a similar way, it's comforting because I can say, here it all is. And I can hopefully sort of move, take further steps away from some of the things I write about in this collection.
Yeah. And I imagine that vulnerability is something that you talk to your students about too, or try to teach them to express in their own work. So in a way, you're teaching by example here.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I try, and I teach middle school, and they are vulnerable, and that is something they are trying desperately to mask, and it's not always successful. So, seeing their sort of raw feeling and talking them through it, or accommodating for it is something that I think makes me a stronger person and a better writer because I'm surrounded by that. I mean, there's nothing like the emotion of a middle schooler.
No. Lord. There is not.
I do carry it with me, yes.
So this book begins by thrusting us immediately into the aftermath of an accident. The first lines are, I wake in the hospital bed, my body torn, my clothing removed. Would you be comfortable telling us a little bit about the car accident that was the catalyst for this collection?
Sure, yeah. I am going to make a very long story short and start kind of in the action. My cousin and I were on the Q Bridge in New Haven, for those who know it. It's a big bridge. There's no breakdown lane. And we realized that our car was on fire. We were driving an old beat-up Subaru, and we had to pull over despite there not being a breakdown lane, because when your car's on fire, you pull over. So we could see it from the back of the car, and we pulled over. And thankfully, we were so lucky that a guy driving a huge truck pulled over right behind us and had a fire extinguisher with him and put out the fire. It was like it all happened so quickly. And so we were so grateful to him while simultaneously navigating what do we do next. We called 911. And then the three of us were on this bridge, and the traffic was going around us, and it was almost 11 p.m. So it's late, but traffic was figuring it out. The truck had its hazards on, and then someone just came, crested the bridge, didn't see us, and plowed into the truck going 55 miles an hour, which then crushed me and my cousin, who is okay. I sometimes leave that out of this story. My cousin's fine. Crushed me between the guardrail and the truck itself. And the guy who helped us was unscathed, thank goodness. But I certainly nearly died that night. So I was in the hospital and spent months recovering from that in the hospital and rehab, and then at home with my parents.
And you write about that experience in this book, and have offered to read us one of the poems from it. This one is called "When Asked If I Saw the White Light." It's one that really struck me when I first read your work.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Okay. When asked if I saw the white light, pain blazed in my eyes under the light they angled to see me by. The nation's best weren't sure they could tidy the mess of me. No monitor predicted yes. Here's what I saw. The glow of open ambulance doors, the black backs of my eyelids, my neon sneaker in the street. We bleed. We are manhandled by mortality. No brightness undarkens what dying looks like.
No monitor predicted yes. Have you talked with your family since about what it was like for them to hear that news?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's something that took me a really long time to do because for so long, it was my trauma only. And I couldn't internalize the fact that my parents were, of course, traumatized by this news. So I have talked with them, and what I know is that my mom has told me that the call that she got, my parents are divorced, the call that she got from the hospital, she said, is she going to be okay? And they said, just get here. And to hear that, as I'm a parent now, I wasn't at the time, and to hear that, I truly can't imagine what they went through and continue to go through with that, living with that. So they definitely... And then they lived with it and helped me, survive in the aftermath. So yeah, we have talked about it, and it's something everyone's processing in their own way, and sort of thanks to me reprocessing perhaps at the moment a decade later.
Well, I as we mentioned earlier, you said that you've been working on this book for many years now. You also went to the Breadloaf School of English in Middlebury, and I imagine worked on it while you were there. Did you have to put the project down for any periods of time, or step away from it as you processed this trauma in a different way? Or was writing always like a constant?
No, I did. I had to put it down a number of times. I actually I wrote most of the very early drafts of these poems while I was at Syracuse getting an MFA from 2018 to 2021, and kind of ended up with something that was a sort of a semblance of a book, and I stuck it in a drawer. And I think there were a few different reasons. There were a few different times when I paused. One was while I was working on, I didn't write about it for a long time. It took me a while to kind of gain the ability to write about it. But when I got pregnant, I stopped entirely. And I think a lot of that had to do with, that was 3, and my son's 3.5. So, almost 5 years ago. I think it had to do with body trauma and steering away from thinking too much about a broken body and focusing on, and then a lot of the poems have turned into these, what I hope are sort of more powerful pieces about, like, look at the resilience that's here and what my body can do. And I didn't want to dwell in the ways that my body was so delicate in so many. That's kind of the duality of the collection, is that both exist, right? And I can bear a child while simultaneously, any moment something can just like physically crush a body. So I tried to, that, it really stayed in the drawer at that time. And then just writer fear when it became something that really could look like a book. It was like, well, this can't be, so I put it away for another little while. It's lived in my drawer a number of times.
Have you talked to your middle school students about the process of writing a book or the fact that this is coming out? Do they know?
They do know, and they have been wonderful about it. This is a new job at Vermont Day School, and they're learning, they and their parents are learning, they're getting to know me, and they're getting to know my story. And this is one that with middle schoolers, I have to be delicate with. And the book, I spoke with parents, or I emailed parents and just warned them that I'd given an R rating, this book, and that it's not entirely appropriate for younger students, or should be read by parents first. But I will. Vermont Day School has been really supportive and is going to offer a time for me to read the appropriate poems that I do have and talk to students about the process of writing a book and what it looks like. And my students who are very excited about writing. I have a couple who are already writing their own books, and it's really a lovely thing about my job that I get to serve as an example of someone who actually did it, and they see me almost every day, and it'll make it hopefully feel more tangible and possible for them.
And you have a number of other book events coming up in the region, including one in Shelburne tonight.
I do,
is that
yes.
right?
One
Tell us about
tonight. It's at the Pearson Library. Flying Pig is hosting it, and I will be in conversation with my birth doula who helped me with my second child. So I'll read, and then she and I will talk about birth. It's, I think, officially called birth trauma and the poetry process, but we'll sort of talk through a lot of what the collection entails and the writing of it. And she knows a lot about the epilepsy I have that developed from this accident, and will get there in our conversation as well, because that's kind of her area of interest from a non-clinical standpoint.
And then lastly, Molly, I know you moved to Vermont 5 years ago now, is it?
Yes,
in
it
2020?
was 2020. We're adamant that we're not COVID movers because we always wanted to be here, but it was 2020.
I'm curious if Vermont has shaped your writing in any way.
Oh, I love that question. I think it's quieted my mind a lot, which is scary as a writer, to have that sort of time and space. I lived in Brooklyn before I moved here, and it was like, there's no time. There's never any time. I'm so busy. I have to, I can't do this. And I think being in Vermont and having we live in Addison, truly like amongst the cows. And I think sitting down and writing, which I try to do every summer as a practice, to really give myself time each day to write, because I'm a teacher and I have the luxury of having that time off. Doing that in a truly quiet house aids and hinders my process, but has been something that I've had to grow comfortable with. So just for me as a person, it's been really beneficial. And then I think my writing develops in a more maybe mature or true way from that openness.
Molly Johnson's debut poetry collection, Everything Alive, is out today from Green Writers Press. She's a writer and teacher in Addison County. Molly, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
All right, that is all the time that we have for today. We'll try to share some links to all the different book-related events that we discussed during this past hour on vermontpublic.org. Our show today was directed by Aaliyah Papes. John Ahrens is our managing producer. Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro are our producers. Our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.